There's a sense in the whole late 19th century United States that the country can be made into a single, unified, coherent place. And at the same time, there's a sense that you're going to make it into, in this 19th century phrase, a white man's country. And the West is a very mixed place. It's full of Chinese. It's full of Mormons. It's full of Mexicans who have become Mexican Americans. It's full of Indian peoples. And the question becomes, what are you going to do about them?
Let us forget once and forever the word Indian and all that it has signified in the past. And remember only that we are dealing with so many children of a common father. Charles C. Painter.
In the autumn of 1883, a group of white people gathered at the Mohonk Mountain House in upstate New York. They were clergymen, government officials, social workers, and although some of them had never been to the West or actually met an Indian, they were convinced they knew how to bring Native Americans into the mainstream of American life. The decisions they would make would change the lives of all the Indian peoples of the West forever.
The name reformers had for themselves was Friends of the Indians. It's a very revealing name. What they saw themselves as doing was sharing the blessings of Christianity and the blessings of modern civilization with people who did not yet have it. They were going to protect their rights. They were going to raise them up to the level of others in American society. And they were going to try to absorb them into what they saw as the best qualities of American Protestant civilization. And as they saw it, who could argue with that?
The Friends of the Indian wanted to transform the youngest generation as rapidly as possible. Indian children as young as 5 were to be taken from their families and sent halfway across the continent to the United States Indian Training and Industrial School at Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
It was a military school, and they were trying to make white people out of them. Then when they took the children away from the mothers, they just knew they'd never see their children anymore. And then they didn't think about school. They were thinking they didn't know whether or not they really went to school or were going to be killed.
Our belongings were taken from us. Even the little medicine bags our mothers had given us to protect us from harm. Everything was placed in a heap and set afire. Lone Wolf.
All the boys in our school were given English names because their Indian names were difficult for the teachers to pronounce. Besides, the Aboriginal names were considered by the missionaries as heathenish. And so, in the place of Tainio Gawaja came Philip Sheridan. In that of Wapade, Ulysses S. Grant.
Within 20 years, there were 24 other off-reservation schools like Carlisle, and 81 boarding schools and 147 day schools on the reservations. Dog Creek, Forest Grove, Pocatello, Fort Defiance, Fort Concho. Despite their grim reality, many Indians saw them as the best available way to prepare their children for a new life in the white man's world. Even Sitting Bull made sure his children were sent to school, including his son Crowfoot, who had surrendered his father's rifle to the Army at Fort Buford. All Indian schools shared the same goal. Education, said one reformer, should seek the disintegration of the tribes. They should be educated not as Indians, but as Americans.
Even if one was successful at Indian school, let's say that one went off to Carlisle and graduated and came back, what place did that man have in a society that had not changed, that didn't need to have somebody that knew how to play the French horn or do the Irish jig? They had no value in that society. I think one of the contrasts was, what kind of shoe do you wear? Do you wear a moccasin or do you wear the white man's shoe?
Yes, they took our dialect away. When I went to Concho, my little friends, we all spoke our dialect. And we were told not to talk it, speak English. So our matron, a big husky white lady, her name was Garrett. Somebody said, Mother Garrett's coming. Well, we all tried to keep quiet, but she heard me. Mother Garrett jerked me by the color of my dress and drugged me in the bathroom. That lye soap was about that big and about that high. She broke off a piece and she washed my mouth, lye soap. She said, don't you ever speak Indian again, or I'm going to wash your mouth again. And my tongue got blistered from that lye.
The Zuni faith is as a drop of oil in water, surrounded and touched at every point, yet in no place penetrated or changed inwardly by the flood of alien belief that descended upon it. The Zuni adjusts other beliefs and opinions to his own, but never his own beliefs and opinions to others. In religious culture, the Zuni is almost the same as ere his land was discovered. Frank Cushing.
In 1879, a frail but eager 22-year-old named Frank Hamilton Cushing arrived at the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico. 3.5 centuries earlier, the Zunis had been among the first Indians of the West to meet a European, the explorer Coronado, who had stormed their village in 1540. Cushing had arrived for an entirely different reason. He had been fascinated by tales of Indians ever since he had discovered an arrowhead near his home in central New York as a boy. Now, he was part of the first expedition of the newly formed U.S. Bureau of Ethnology, sent to survey Indian tribes as quickly as possible on the belief that Native Americans and their customs were about to disappear. To the shock of his Eastern companions, Cushing immediately moved in to one of the Indians' homes and announced he intended to stay. The best way to understand Indians, he said, was to live the way they did. Cushing learned pottery making, cooking, and the Zuni's language. He wore Zuni clothing, grew his hair long, had his ears pierced, and adopted a Zuni name, Tenatsali, medicine flower. The Zunis accepted Cushing into their sacred priesthood of the bow, but only after he went through the lengthy and torturous initiation, which included days of fasting, sitting motionless on a hill of fire ants, and taking an enemy's scalp. Cushing was now an influential member of the tribe. He took part in their councils, and he joined a war party against Navajo raiders, enraging the Navajo's Indian agent.
Mr. Galen Eastman, Navajo Indian Agency, Fort Defiance, Arizona Territory. Sir, it is quite true that I fired not twice, but 3 times into 2 different bands of horses belonging to the Navajo Indians. It is possible that, as I intended, I killed 1 or 2 of them, although of this I cannot be certain. Rest assured, sir, that when all of our grievances are set right by the Navajos, we shall be then very ready to say amen and to act all things aright on our side. Very respectfully, your obedient servant, F.H. Cushing, 1st War Chief of Zuni, U.S. Assistant Ethnologist.
Cushing continued to quarrel with missionaries and Indian agents intent on changing the Zunis. But when he exposed a scheme by relatives of a powerful U.S. senator to build a ranch on Zuni land, his superiors ordered him back home. He had been sent to study the Zunis, not become one. In 1884, Cushing returned to Washington. More than half a century later, in 1938, an archaeologist reported that older Zuni people, not knowing that Cushing had died in 1900, still wondered why their good friend Medicine Flower had never returned.